Kyle Taylor liked night shifts. After 1 a.m., the subway sounded different, not like the bustle of trains, but more like a deep oceanic hum. His section was between 23rd St. and 28th St. on Line 6, where the cable trays veered off into an old service tunnel built back in the 1920s. The repair crews nicknamed it the recruit route. Long, straight, with 0 turns. Boring, safe, perfect for new contractors. That night, the shift engineer handed Kyle a tablet with the work permit and muttered almost offhandedly, "Everything inside's been rerouted for new cabling, but watch for the arrows marked with a J. If anything feels off, stop and count to 3. Just don't step back past the 3rd pillar, got it?" Then he turned back to his paperwork. Kyle, used to dark humor from tech crews, didn't think much of it. Just another prank on the rookie. He signed in with security, matched tags, and a minute later, the heavy grate of the access hatch slammed shut behind him. The hush of the tunnel wrapped around him like a blanket. Ahead stretched a concrete corridor with a low ceiling and sodium lamps spilling droopy yellow tongues of light. Every 20 meters, a heavy-duty pillar with tech labels and a square sign, Exit J. The arrow pointed due north, deeper into the tunnel. Kyle checked the radio. Solid signal. 3 bars. A train rumbled off toward Brooklyn behind him. Ahead, the corridor looked like someone had drawn it with a ruler. He started walking, counting the pillars. It would help for the report later. The first segment was uneventful. Even rails, identical lamps, the sound of dripping on the right, airflow brushing from the left. At the 5th pillar, the temperature sensor read a steady 59 degrees, perfectly normal for the northern stretch of the line. A minute later, he spotted the next arrow. It was identical to the first. White paint, black letter, a flaking corner. Kyle instinctively touched it. Cold metal. Nothing strange. 2 or 3 minutes later, it happened again. Same arrow, same flaking corner. Déjà vu, he thought with a smirk. But now the dripping was on the left, and the draft on the right. Kyle stopped. Had something flipped? He could have sworn it was dripping on the right before. He remembered the foreman's words. With a sigh, he turned around. The corridor behind him stretched into shadow, like the light had pulled away. Kyle slowly counted out loud. 1, 2, 3. At 3, the lamps behind him flickered, and the dripping sound returned to the right. He chuckled, nervously. Must have imagined it. Still, an uneasy chill scratched under his ribs. He picked up the pace, trying not to think, but at the next sign, the letter J wasn't stenciled. It was handwritten, slightly slanted. The handwriting felt alive, like it had just been drawn with a marker. That paint wasn't standard issue. Vandals. But this was a secure zone, full of cameras and alarms. Kyle pulled out his phone and turned on the flashlight. The paint still looked wet. He wiped a finger across it. The J smeared, leaving a black streak on his glove. Somewhere in the corridor, a relay clicked, and the light shifted colder. Not yellow sodium, but almost fluorescent white. His heart dropped like a stone. That was it. Enough. He'd snap a photo, head to the nearest ladder, call it in. But the radio hissed like someone coughed on the channel. No response from dispatch. His throat tightened. Then came the first truly weird thing. Around the next bend, a power panel jutted from the wall, its door hanging open, wires exposed. Kyle froze. Panels were never supposed to be open, but irritation beat out fear. Someone screwed up, I'll report it later. And he kept walking, not looking back. As soon as he passed the next pillar, the lamp behind him gave a quiet pop and died, like someone pulled the power. The arrow on the last sign looked black, not painted black, just black. Burned out. Colorless. He hurried back to the open panel. The lid still hung the same, but the floor felt softer, like the concrete had give. He snapped the cover shut, spun around, counted to 3. The lamp flickered on again. The arrow shone white. He checked his pulse, 120 BPM. He walked on, trying to piece together a logic. Notice the glitch. It resets. Miss it. Things break. A mind game. Stories like this usually lived in repair crew bars, told of war beers, bought by rookies who got lost in service tunnels. But here it felt like the tunnel itself was watching, waiting to see if he'd slip. The next anomaly was bigger. A water vending machine bulged from the right wall. Big, with a cracked glass panel. Its green LED display showed 045. There were no machines like this in closed service routes. The numbers ticked down. A countdown, Kyle wondered. Remembering the rule, he grabbed the power cord and yanked. The plug popped free. The screen died. A relay clicked, but this time the light didn't shift whiter, just returned to normal. Kyle felt the pressure lift from his chest. When the usual exit J sign returned, he stopped and hit record on his phone. He needed a verifiable log. Line 6, Service Corridor, 2:14 a.m., documenting irregular navigation changes. The camera focused on the arrow, but behind it, in the reflection of a dusty ad panel, something moved. Kyle zoomed in. The glass reflected the corridor, but lagged. When he lifted his hand, the reflection reacted late, and behind the reflection, a shadow grew. A tall man in a work vest, fists clenched. No face, just a smear. In real life, there was no one. He spun around. Nothing. His breath caught. He slowly backed up. The ad panel stood silent like a dead frame. Click. The lights shifted again, now bright white. The corridor looked cleaner, straighter. Lamps no longer flickered. The concrete seemed polished. Even the dripping sounded edited. He tasted iron from a bitten lip. Kyle realized the first round of the game was done. From here on out, it was simple. Turn around in time, or end up as one of the shadows in the reflection. He adjusted his helmet, set a 2-minute timer on his phone, just long enough not to miss a cue, and stepped toward the next pillar. The bulbs now glowed with a smooth, cold light, making the corridor feel like part of a modern office building. Only the smell of damp concrete remained, a grim reminder that there were no windows here, no world outside, just an endless shaft where one mistake could be your last. Kyle set a timer on his phone, 2 minutes. Every 120 seconds he had to look back, to catch even the smallest inconsistency. The rule was simple: miss 3 times, and you lose the light. And when the light goes, so do you. The foreman's voice kept buzzing in his head. Just don't go past the 3rd pillar. Why the 3rd? What was beyond the 4th? The thought of testing it made his knees feel like wet cotton. No experiments, he decided. The first 2 cycles passed cleanly. In one, the chipped corner of the exit J sign had reappeared smooth. He scratched at it with his nail. Flakes of paint crumbled, returning the sign to its familiar scuffed look. In the next, the dripping sound suddenly stopped, replaced by a faint hiss of ventilation. Odd, since it had been silent before. Kyle turned, counted to 3. The drips returned, the hiss disappeared. Each correction seemed to make the white light brighter, like someone was slowly turning up a dimmer. By now the corridor was almost blinding. On the 3rd pass the timer beeped. Kyle turned, as instructed. Nothing wrong, arrow still white. But then his eyes drifted to the floor, and his fingers clenched. There it was, a single footprint in the dusty grayish concrete, boot-sized, but it didn't belong. His own steps came in pairs. This one was extra, and it trailed off into the darkness, veering slightly left, like someone had been creeping along the edge of the tunnel in a curve. Kyle called out, "Hello, someone there?" His voice ricocheted off the concrete and died. No splash, no echo. He stepped forward to wipe away the footprint with his boot, but instead, his soul left a mark on top of it, like the original had only been muted, not erased. Click. The light grew colder, a faint blue now, the kind found in doctors' offices. Then the rhythm shifted. Instead of a steady distance to the next arrow, the corridor stretched. Kyle walked, pacing it out, expecting 20 meters, but the sign never came. Mark. 27 meters. 30. 35. His phone beeped twice, but no new pillar appeared. His legs started to itch, some inner counter screaming louder than the device. Then the sign itself must be the anomaly. He stopped, turned, counted. 8 meters behind, the last exit J sign glowed, brighter than ever. Ahead, one lamp flickered into old sodium yellow. Warm, the corridor seemed to exhale, briefly, unpleasantly, and then white light returned, along with a new arrow at the proper distance. Kyle chuckled into the tunnel. Got it, testing my reactions. The 5th cycle brought the first warning. The sign looked perfect, but something was wrong. His brain kept muttering, not right, but his eyes couldn't find a flaw. Seconds dragged. The timer hadn't gone off yet, so not 2 minutes. Then he saw it. The arrow pointed straight ahead, not right. The J still faced the right direction, but the arrow's outline had shifted 10 degrees, as if saying, "Come closer." Kyle reached out to adjust it, then hesitated. The rule, fix what's wrong, but never touch. That hesitation saved him. He pulled his hand back, turned, counted. Behind him, the arrow pointed left instead, forming a crooked V. Click. The light stabilized, both arrows now aligned correctly. First yellow flag, he thought. The lamp ahead blinked, like it agreed. The next anomaly caught him off guard. Between pillars, a rolling service cart appeared, plastic, like a janitor's. On top, sat the same water bottle from the vending machine, but disassembled. Keypad, power board, weight sensor, and lying on the edge, an MTA ID card. Name, K. Taylor. The photo, his face, but instead of a hard hat he wore a surgical cap. His badge, Manhattan Coroner's Office, morgue technician. Kyle dropped the card. The plastic hit the floor without a sound, like there was nothing beneath it. Don't touch means skip, he wondered. He forced himself to pick it back up, flipped the photo, down so he didn't have to see it. Turned, counted, no change in light, but the arrow behind was black. Second strike. A dull splash echoed from the left wall, like someone stepped barefoot into a shallow puddle. And now, the air smelled damp, rotten. Before, it had been dry. His heart slammed into his throat. One more miss, and I'm done. He quickly snapped a photo of the cart, evidence, and moved on, careful not to run. Running means breathing hard. Breathing hard means missing the next mistake. Then the corridor started playing for keeps. 10 meters ahead, the lights flickered, then died. An entire section went black. No flicker, no buzz. Just off. A dark rectangle stretched across the passage. One final arrow glowed at the edge, calling him forward. Kyle stopped. The timer ticked, but his brain ticked faster. Anomaly? Yes. But how to fix it? He ran through options in his head. Lights should come on if, behind him a squish, closer this time. A step? A frog in a puddle? He couldn't risk a third strike. He raised his phone flashlight toward the dark. In the far corner, at floor level, something pale. A handkerchief. It moved, like something breathed beneath it. He cranked up the brightness. The cloth vanished. The wall was clean. He turned. White arrow intact. Click. Lights flared back up ahead. The shadow vanished. As he exhaled, from the right wall came a slow, wet inhale, like someone pulled off a mask, underwater. The hairs on his neck stood up, but the sound wasn't in the tunnel. It was in his headphones, inside his skull. The next exit J sign looked like salvation. The lights here were brighter than hospital white. He reached for the familiar lettering, and stopped. There was no letter. Arrow, yes. Outline, yes. But the interior, blank, just glossy enamel. For a moment he wanted to draw the J himself, but remembered, touch it and the rule might shift. Instead he pulled out a marker pencil, hovered it over the sign. Clack, like a breaker box slamming shut. Kyle froze. Behind him, breathing. Slow, heavy, drawn out. The timer beeped. Time to look back. He turned and saw the arrow behind him, pitch black, and just then, 10 meters ahead. The light died completely. The rectangle of darkness widened, like curtains opening on a stage. Kyle could feel it. One more miss, and the heavy footstep waiting in that dark would find him. He tightened his grip on the marker, pressed it to the blank sign. Fix it now, or the tunnel would take the light and leave only the breath. The tip shook against the enamel, and Kyle realized his fingers were sticky, like the dust had mixed with the moisture from someone else's step. The marker trembled against the glossy enamel. As soon as it moved, the corridor reacted. From the dark patch ahead, a booted leg stepped forward, rubber, knee-high, heavy. It landed with a wet slap, and though the lights there had long since gone out, a steel glint of a sickle flashed briefly in the blackness. Kyle nearly dropped the pencil. The formula spun in his head. Fix the anomaly, restore the light. He pressed the tip to the sign and drew the letter J in one clean stroke, sharp and neat, just like before. The enamel seemed to drink in the ink. The shape filled, and in the same instant, white light exploded forward, turning the sickle-wielding shadow into nothing but empty space. Kyle exhaled. But before he could take a step, he felt movement behind him, where the second, black arrow had been. A dry whirl tore through the air, as if years of dust had been ripped loose all at once. He turned. The arrow was gray now, but the faint smoke, clinging to its edges, drifted ominously in the light. On the floor, fresh prints gouged into the concrete, deep, like someone in heavy boots had just walked through. 2 errors fixed, but 1 black mark remains, Kyle thought. If the rules were rigid, the tunnel still demanded a 3rd failure, so the void could fully emerge. He needed to finish this game before that happened. The corridor changed. Instead of concrete, polished metal panels lined the walls, like a recent subway renovation that remembered nothing. The signs were gone. In their place, a rule board hung crookedly on the wall, covered in faded pictograms. Always move forward. Notice the changes. Never turn back. That last rule clashed with the life-saving 3-second check. Then he remembered the foreman's exact words. Just don't walk more than 3 pillars back. He hadn't said not to look. He'd said not to step backward, so a glance was fine. But stepping, that would break the system. Ahead came the soft sound of a splash. Kyle checked his timer. 1 minute left before the next event. He needed a sign, a lamp, even a typo, something to prompt the tunnel to throw a correction before it made its next move. A green door appeared, frosted glass. On it, the MTA emblem. But inside the circle, instead of blue and white, the letter K blinked. His name. Is that the error? He reached out. On the metal plate beneath the window, equipment locker, personal. The door was slightly ajar, swinging inward. A breeze slipped out, ozone and something sweet, almost like caramel. Kyle snatched his hand back. Don't touch. Touching meant accepting the trap the tunnel offered. But if it was an anomaly, he had to correct it. He pulled out his marker, crossed out the K, and redrew the familiar MTA logo. Then turned, counted. The door flickered, then settled into a flat, sterile blue, just like the others. Click. The light above whitened again. Even the floor below looked smoother now, the dusty boot prints gone. The timer beeped, but the 3rd miss never came. Not yet. The light guided him to a fork. For the first time, the tunnel split. A T-junction. Signs marked both paths. Left, exit E. Right, exit J. Intuition screamed, go right. But that side sank into half-shadow and sloped downward like a throat. The left path was bright, sterile, easy. Kyle remembered the bootstep echo. The void wanted mistakes, which meant it invited him into that glowing corridor. A different letter, a dead end. He took a breath, turned into the darkness. Right. And as soon as he stepped in, the lamps flared on, like a reward. 3 pillars later, A familiar exit J sign twisted 90 degrees, pointing directly into a narrow opening. A ladder led up. The tag read, Historical Emergency Egress. Above it, slatted doors. Kyle placed a hand on the aluminum, cold, real. It smelled like true tunnel ventilation. He climbed. At the top, he smacked into the glowing edge of a newsstand sign. Around him, the dim empty platform of 28th Saint. The clock above blinked. 3:34. Kyle turned around. Behind him stood a plain staff-only door, no arrow, no white light. He raised his phone to take a picture, when behind him, clink, a sound like a giant key turning in a lock. The door thudded softly shut, the draft inside shifted, and all went still. Kyle hurried to the station desk, told the operator, "The corridor marked J, it's not safe." The worker pulled out a map. The J-Line service hall, he said, had been officially sealed off, back in 1986. But Kyle had only been down there for 30 minutes, according to his watch, although, now that he looked closer, the second hand, it ticked slower, like it had made 3 extra laps. The station clerk had called in the night shift engineer while Kyle sat in the break room, trying to warm his hands like he'd just stepped in from a February blizzard. The sticky dust clinging to his skin smelled strange, ozone, concrete, and a faint whiff of something like scorched sugar cane. Lost in thought, he blew it off. Tiny particles swirled in the harsh fluorescent light like white sparks. "Dude, sounds like the fake shift got you," smirked Vince, the incoming engineer. "Underground's full of those stories. Corridor Z, Elevator 13. You probably zoned out, looped around a tunnel." "I saw signs change, lights. Something was moving in there," Kyle shot back. "When your brain's stuck to train hums at midnight, you'd be surprised what it coughs up." They went to check the staff-only door. Just a standard metal sheet, old welds, nothing weird. Vince knocked, dull and hollow. Kyle touched the handle. It was warm. He nudged it. It gave way. Inside was a narrow vestibule, leading straight to a concrete wall, sealed like a military bunker had poured cement straight into the hallway. No signs, no lights. As they turned to leave, Kyle noticed something. A tiny bubble in the doorframe's white paint, still raised and fresh. He ran a finger across it. Black dust smeared under his nail, drawing the shape of half a letter. Looked like a J. The next morning he submitted an incident report. It was full of strange entries, self-drawing arrows, a water machine that wasn't there, a ghost in the reflection. The shift supervisor just grunted. "Write it up as navigation irregularities. Leave out the spooky stuff. Go home, sleep it off." Outside, rain poured like it was trying to scrub the whole city clean. Under a canopy, Kyle opened his phone. The corridor photos were still there, except for the final one, the one with the black void. Gone. In its place, a gray JPEG blur. File name, JExit, open.jpg file size, 0 bytes. Something rose inside him, like an unfinished thought stuck behind the tongue. He took the train back to the Bronx, to his apartment. Everything was normal. Until, after his shower, on the fogged bathroom mirror, a shaky arrow appeared, pointing right. His hand trembled. He wiped it with a towel. The mirror fogged again. The arrow came back, this time with a J beside it. Ignore it, he told himself. He managed, until night. When he turned off the living room light, the arrow blazed on the wall in a soft blue phosphor glow, pointing toward the bedroom hallway. He switched the lamp on. It vanished. In his sleep, he half heard a sloshy step in the entryway, and that familiar click of a breaker. His heart jolted awake, but all was quiet. Tomorrow, he decided, I'm tossing the marker, flushing this from my brain. In the morning, no arrows. Kyle breathed easier. Until he opened the mailbox. Inside was a single envelope. No stamp. Inside, a plastic ID badge, his photo, but the title read, After Service Technician, J-Line Retrofit Hire Date, Today. On the back, an itemized checklist. Light report, arrow inspections. 3 backward glances, do not pass the third post final line, signature for shift acknowledgement. The ink on the signature line was still wet. Behind him the apartment entrance door slammed shut. Heavy, deliberate footfalls echoed, wet rubber boots on cement. The smell hit next, damp rot with a touch of caramel. Kyle dropped the envelope and turned. The hallway was empty, but on the floor, a single fresh footprint. Leading to the basement stairs. Next to it, in chalk, an arrow pointing right, and the letter J. He remembered the tunnel's third rule, never turn back. His heart thundered, but his body followed the rule. Kyle stepped forward where the ground was clean, and looked back, exactly on 1, 2, 3. Downstairs, a white light blinked once. So pure it almost rang. In his gut he knew. The loop hadn't closed. The corridor had just changed its coordinates. His apartment's basement had become the new post 1. Maybe Kyle would sound crazy if he told anyone the MTA's midnight tunnel could grow into any wall where someone accidentally draws an arrow, or that someone out there was deliberately handing people the rules to a game. Notice the anomaly, or the light goes out. But it didn't matter. What mattered was the rhythm. 2 steps forward, 1 glance back, count to 3, and never miss the third. Because, when the third arrow goes dark, that's when the void takes its step, and no lamp in the city burns as white as the ones that light up when the J-line picks its next shift. If you made it all the way to the end, then you're exactly the kind of person I'm looking for. Hit that subscribe button. It really means a lot to me. I hope I can keep bringing you more stories, to make you smile, or maybe, to scare you.